In episode 3 of The Last of Us' second season, we saw how secrets played a big part in Ellie's story now that the one person she could share hers with is out of the picture. We understand the stakes, why she can't tell the truth, and how even though their relationship was going through a rough patch at the beginning of the season, having someone to share that burden with was something she couldn't imagine living without. I'm still me, he's still Joel, and nothing's ever gonna change that, ever. Later in the same episode, something did change that, and that changed the course of her story to put her on a path. The third episode gave us the aftermath and some time for reflection before presenting the next chapter as Ellie and Dina went looking for justice for Joel in Seattle. Based on the last shot of the official HBO promo teaser for episode 4, it looks like their journey will bring some of her secrets to light. The trailer opens with a new character named Isaac, who's played by Jeffrey Wright. He was first mentioned in the season 2 premiere when Abby's ex-Fireflies discussed their next steps. Owen mentioned that someone they knew had a brother named Isaac, who ran an outfit in Seattle and would take them all in. 5 years later, when they show up in Wyoming, they have WLF patches on their gear and say their commander has trained them to follow a code. They say they don't kill people who can't defend themselves. And even though Abby makes an exception for Joel, who killed her father, this is why they let Dina and Ellie live. The opening shot of the teaser where we get our first look at Isaac is a flashback. You can just compare the later shot where the actor looks much older because he has a lot more gray in his beard. There are other clues. He's wearing what looks like riot gear that has a visible Fedra patch on it. And while this could just be gear they stole, his uniform has his real last name on it. And that makes it seem like he probably worked for the Federal Disaster Response Agency who controlled the quarantine zones after the cordyceps outbreak. This would be a slight change from his story in the game, which I should mention, the main way you learn about Isaac is through artifacts you find as you explore Seattle. And while you learn a great deal about when the WLF took over, you don't learn much about their leader. I won't spoil details from future events in the game in this video either way, but I will say this opening sequence is interesting since it looks like the show is further developing the character, which is welcome because as I said, they didn't really tell you too much about the guy. In this scene, we see him meet with a woman on a residential street. She's got a group of people with her. They're not scars, at least they don't look like the ones we saw in the last episode. And asking if he's Isaac makes it look like this is the first time they've met. Based on what we've seen on screen, they could be anyone. We've literally never been to Seattle or heard much about it. As far as characters, I think they could be playing from the game. One is somewhat inconsequential and would be cool for people who remember reading the artifacts, but otherwise would mostly be there to develop Isaac and tell us how he became who he is. The other is a more significant character and might be really interesting because they've always been presented as a mystery, but that's all I can say without spoilers. The character is being played by Alana Ubach, who is recognizable. She's been in a million things going back to the 1990s. So you'd imagine they wouldn't have hired her for just this one scene. There's one other quick shot of Isaac later in the trailer, which has shown up in the official season 2 trailer and was also in the Weeks Ahead trailer after episode 1. And in that version, you hear his dialogue. He's talking to this guy who is naked and looks battered and was possibly tortured while in custody. Isaac says, "We have automatic weapons. You lunatics have bows and arrows, superstition. So tell me how we're going to lose." His prisoner responds, "Every day one of your wolves comes to see the truth." The introduction of the scars in episode 3 gives you a better idea of the conflict between these two groups. The people we met were presented as refugees who were guided by the teachings of a prophet based on the father and daughter's conversation. Dina and Ellie's finding their bodies certainly made the wolves look like the bad guys in the situation, and if nothing else will help them feel justified in their quest for justice. In the episode 4 teaser, they also find a dead WLF soldier who was killed by arrows, which ties back to what Isaac was saying about them. It shows that they can defend themselves if necessary, and is just another clue that things in Seattle aren't as pretty and peaceful as they seem from a distance. In another shot, we see a wolf light and throw a flare inside a metro tunnel or station. You can see a name on the patch on his vest that wasn't familiar to me. An interesting detail about this, though, is that it looks handmade, as does the WLF patch you see later, contrasting with the ones on Isaac's uniform in the flashback. You see his flare burning on the tracks before it cuts to Dina doing what she did in the premiere, where she sits quietly and listens to how many infected they're dealing with while counting on her fingers. The first time we saw this, it showed that Ellie was the more impulsive of the two. This time, it shows that they're in a much heavier situation. It's also a nod to the gameplay mechanic called Listen Mode. When creeping around areas with infected or other threats, you can stay still and listen to see where your enemies are located, sort of around corners and even behind walls at times. Here, it works as a nice device to build the tension throughout the trailer, because we see her go from 1 to 5, and I guess that's all the infected there are, but who knows, because she could have just ran out of fingers too. While she's counting, there's a quiet moment of Ellie playing a guitar in a blown out building that looks like a music store from the instruments hanging on the walls. This is a recognizable cutscene from the game that looks pretty one-to-one here, and you can't hear what she's singing in this version, so it might be considered a spoiler, but there is a different version out there where you can tell Bella Ramsey learned the song and does this in her own voice and does a pretty good job of singing it to Dina. In a different shot, Ellie hides in a room and then charges when a wolf turns and spots her with his flashlight. Her jujitsu skills might help her get a stealth kill on this guy, who is much larger than her, which I suppose isn't weird because most people are actually a lot larger than her, and Dina for that matter. Either way, she takes him down, and you see him lose his grip on his rifle. The dark, dank, and claustrophobic close quarters stuff should make for an on the edge of your seat kind of episode. If you didn't appreciate them taking the time to pay tribute to Joel's character last week, this one should be a different experience. After Dina finishes her count, a sequence of quick cuts promises a lot of carnage. And if you go back and watch the Weeks Ahead trailer, most of this stuff is extended in that as well. The wolf's flare from earlier has attracted infected who appear to be mostly runners, and you see them rushing towards a subway car. A far away shot shows a fight with the infected. I'm not sure if this is just a weird angle or if it's someone watching what's happening. Because of the way everything's cut, you can't tell if this is one battle or several. In the far away shot, there are people with flashlights, and when someone fires a rifle, the light from the muzzle lights up the room, so you can see that a few people are getting overrun. It's not Dina and Ellie, so this is probably WLF. That cuts to a shot of a runner busting through the window of a train car where we do see that Dina and Ellie are trapped. Ellie pulls out a handgun to shoot it. That's followed by a shot of a clicker outside one of the windows. It looks like they boosted Dina up to the hatch at the top of the train car, and she reached down to pull Ellie up, and you'd imagine they'd make their escape that way. That's followed by Ellie grimacing as she pushes on a gate to try to get through it. Then we see her run up a set of stairs, looking back to see if Dina is following her. There's another shot of them inside what looks like a theater or something along those lines, where Ellie turns around to see that Dina has her gun pointed at her. She's crying and it looks like she's about to put her down. And Ellie just sort of slowly raises her hands to give up while Dina levels her gun to pull the trigger. The only reason she would do this in this world at this moment would be if she thought Ellie was infected. It's a thing that happens and a thing people have to do. The tears in her eyes and the absence of rage don't leave room for it to be anything else, really. So one of two things has to happen. One, she kills Ellie 2 episodes after Joel dies, becomes the main character, and has double the reason to complete the vengeance quest to kill Abby. The other, and hear me out, is that we know Ellie is immune and isn't turning into anything, whether she got bitten or whatever is happening here. So the alternate idea would be that Dina would find out Ellie's big secret and decide to let her live. Either way, this should be a tense, scary, brutal episode of TV. The lack of flashbacks in the preview trailer might add some credibility to my guess that an all-flashback episode primarily focused on Joel and Ellie's bond is coming, but we'll have to wait and see. Let me know what you think, and I think that's a great place to leave things. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.